Hey there, BetterSax players. So I just got back from Rotterdam in the Netherlands, where I played at the North Sea Jazz Festival with a band called the California Honeydrops. Got my t-shirt. In my last video, I shared with you some of the things I was doing to prepare for that gig, learning and memorizing and writing down the horn lines. In today's video, I want to share with you some tips on how to get called for gigs, or more specifically, how to get called back for gigs. Over the last 25 years, I have played with literally countless bands as a sideman. And one thing I can say is that my phone has always been ringing with gig offers. So here's my list of top tips for how to get called for gigs in the first place, but more importantly, what to do on those gigs so that you get called back for future gigs with the same band. One of my very first professional gigs was given to me by my teacher at the time, Mark Getz. He called me up one day. Hello?
Hey, it's Mark. You got a tuxedo?
Yeah?
I got a gig for you Saturday. You writing this down?
Yeah?
It's on Canal and West Broadway. Don't be late or I'll kill you.
Wait, what songs do I have to play?
Standard repertoire.
And that was my introduction to New York club dates in the 90s. I had no idea what to do except wear a tuxedo, bring my saxophone, and don't show up late. But incidentally, there's already some pretty good tips right there. So our first tip, and most important, be on time. Nothing makes you stand out more in a negative way than being late to a gig. So if you want to get called for gigs, show up on time. This goes for rehearsals and pickups as well. Nobody wants to wait around for you, so don't make them. Tip number 2, dress appropriately. If you're supposed to wear all black for the gig, wear all black. Don't wear mostly black, except for like the stripes on my shirt. If you're supposed to wear a suit for the gig, wear a suit. Don't put on black jeans and a jacket. If you're a professional musician, you should have a suit, even if you're a drummer. Tip number 2, of course, bring your instrument. But let's add to this, make sure you've got everything you need. If you're playing something plugged in, bring an extra cable just in case. If you play an instrument that plugs in, bring a power strip or an extension cord, because you can never rely on those things being there at the gig. Be the hero that has an extra cable for the guitar player when he forgot his. Sax players, do a check before you leave for your gig. Make sure you got your mouthpiece, your reeds, your neck strap, everything you need to play the gig. Leave a comment below if you've ever forgotten an essential piece of gear for a gig. We've all done it at least once. The next item on our list is attitude. You may think that how someone plays is the most important factor in getting called for gigs, but that's still further down the list. I know lots of great players that don't have any gigs. Nobody ever calls them because they've got a shitty attitude. If your attitude sucks, nobody's ever going to call you. It doesn't matter how well you play. When working, be positive, be friendly, be likable. If you want to get called back for gigs, don't be the person who's complaining about the music, about the drive, about the parking, about the food, about the drinks, about the pay. You know, in reality, conditions for musicians are rarely ideal, even under the best circumstances. So don't make things worse by whining. Number 5, don't drink too much. Getting drunk on a gig makes a really bad impression. Number 6, at the end of the gig, go and say goodbye to all the musicians in the band and try to say something positive like, hey, great playing with you, or that was a lot of fun. Don't just take off home. Number 7, get contact information from the other musicians. In the old days, we would exchange business cards, but nowadays, just connecting on social media is the way to go. When saying goodbye to the leader of the band or the person that got you the gig, make sure you say thank you for the job and let them know that you'd like to be called back if they need you in the future. But very important, if you are subbing for somebody, do not try and steal their gig. If you get a reputation as someone who does this, your phone will stop ringing pretty quick. Your goal is to be at the top of the list of potential subs for any given gig. You want to establish a reputation as someone who's punctual, reliable, and professional, and most of all, likable. Once you do this, your calendar is going to fill up. Which brings us to tip number 8, which is really important. Answer your phone. Answer your email. Answer your texts. Check your voicemail. In the music business, a lot of things get organized at the last minute. So if you're not quick to respond, the gig will likely just go to somebody else. Notice that we still haven't mentioned anything about playing. This may come as a surprise, but it's actually pretty easy to find musicians who can play well. It is, however, really difficult to find people who can consistently do everything on our list so far. Now, I'm not saying that how you play isn't important. It is, and we each need to take care of that on our own. But when it comes to getting gigs, it's usually more about you as a professional and a person than you as a musician. When I played that first wedding in Little Italy that I was telling you about before, I knew nothing. I didn't know any of the songs. I was completely lost the whole time. Luckily, there were 2 other horn players on this gig who knew exactly what they were doing. They knew all the tunes from memory or by ear and, just nailed it. This was back in a time when horn sections in bands was commonplace and everyone was expected to know the horn lines and be able to play them in different keys and make up arrangements on the spot. So basically, I was just trying to learn as much as I could through observation. But guess what? A week later, the same band called me back for another gig. Okay, so it's 1994, and one of the big ballads at the time was Unforgettable. You know, the Natalie Cole version where she sings with her father. And, there's this big sax solo in that song. So, knowing that this band had that song in the repertoire, I said, I'm going to learn that, and I'm going to show up on this next gig and impress them with my preparation. So I learned the solo. I had it down. So when I get to this second gig with the band, now there's a trombone player. He wasn't on the first gig, it's a different guy. And I tell him straight away, listen, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm new at this. You got any tips, anything you can say to help me out? And he said, don't worry, man. We all learn the repertoire on the bandstand anyway. Pretty soon, you'll know all this stuff. So he was totally cool. It's great. A little later on in the night, it's time to play Unforgettable. And I'm like, okay, great. I got this. I learned that one. Let's go. And it comes time for the sax solo, and I dive right in. But unbeknownst to me, this band played Unforgettable in a completely different key than the Natalie Cole version. So what followed was perhaps the worst sax solo in the history of that song. It was a train wreck. It was horrible. And I probably ruined that poor couple's wedding. But it truly was unforgettable. Somehow, my saxophone career did not end that night. And the trombone player's prediction eventually came true. And I did, learn the standard repertoire. Which brings us to our next tip. Learn the standard repertoire. What constitutes standard repertoire varies depending on the region you live and the time period. It's always changing with what's popular. But if you're a singer, you got to know the words to a bunch of songs and the key you sing them in. If you're a horn player, you need to know the horn lines to these standard songs, and you need to know the melodies to a bunch of standard songs. Just always be adding to your repertoire and you'll be okay. As you do gigs, make lists of tunes that get called that you don't know and go home and learn them. Use the recordings, play along, write out charts if you need to, but be aware that different bands do songs in different keys all the time. So the ability to play things by ear from memory in all 12 keys is crucially important. On my website, BetterSax.com, I've got some courses that I designed to help people develop these skills. So if you're interested and want to learn more, check the link in the description below. When it comes to taking solos, if you're an improviser, be sure to play in the appropriate style for the context. Don't insert Coltrane changes over Despacito, please. You might have fun with this at the time, but it's not really serving the music. For trained jazz musicians, there's often a certain challenge in improvising effectively over really basic harmony. So instead of always trying to show off your bebop chops, maybe go out on a limb and try to play something stylistically appropriate, even though you may be in unfamiliar territory. A good rule of thumb is always be listening more than you're playing, especially when you're not 100% sure of the music. If you're sitting in on a gig, be careful not to overplay. Music is a team sport. You may play great on your own, but when you're a sideman, it's not your band, and it's not all about you. Try to support the other musicians and make them look good. Go for the assist in these situations. I try to do all of these things when I get called for gigs, especially the ones I want to get called back for. Now, if you're starting out, your most valuable asset is going to be experience. So you're going to want to get as many gigs as you can. This is where you're going to make connections and network with other musicians. This is where you're going to learn the standard repertoire and, how to do the job. I had a great time last week playing with the California Honeydrops because they are fun as fuck. And I hope that I get another opportunity to work with them. I put a link in the description below to the band so you can check them out if you don't know about them yet. And I'm gonna leave you with a clip from one of our sets at the North Sea Jazz Festival. Be sure to click the like button if you haven't done so already. Make sure you get yourself subscribed to the channel as well. Thank you so much for watching, and see you again very soon in another BetterSax video.